This special SalemNews.com report is sponsored by Eola Hills Winery in Rick Rial, Oregon.
This all came to my attention because I understand you've been doing this for quite a while, and you started your career as a pilot in the military actually during the Vietnam War.
Yeah, I did. I enlisted when I was 18 in 1969. Went to flight school, medevac training, and then spent just 10 months in Vietnam.
What was the aircraft that you flew at that point, and what part of Vietnam?
I flew in 3 Corps, which was the southern portion of Vietnam. I flew Hueys, flew medevac, and our job was to go out and pick up the wounded at the point of injury.
Wow. So how many years now have you been flying?
There was a 16-and-a-half-year break in service. I've been in the National Guard flying for the last 20 years, and then I had 3 years of active duty.
And what do you fly now?
I fly Black Hawks.
A lot of contrast between a Huey and a Black Hawk?
There is. There's more power, more space. Black Hawk is an excellent platform for everything that we do, especially in Oregon where we have the high cascade rescues. It's got some good power, plenty of room, a lot of pickups that we've done. Couldn't have done it in a Huey. We've done them in Hueys in the past, but struggled.
So, you know, just looking back to Vietnam, I mean, that's such a war of controversy, obviously, and, you know, you've gone from the full gamut of seeing a war that wasn't terribly supported to one that, you know, is, I think, very supported today. What goes through your mind when you think about that?
The American people. It's so nice to have that support. Back then it was different, a different time frame, a different mindset. Government was different, people's ideas were different. I think there's more of a national pride now. The big thing was they hit the U.S. first, similar to World War II, whereas Vietnam was more over in another country, similar to what we're at now, but with the news coverage that they have now. But the fact that they hit the United States first, I think, has the support. Regardless of what the politics are, the support is nice.
But it seems sad in a way because, you know, I'm a history student, obviously, but I mean, when you look back at the way that the communists behaved in the first war that you were in, I mean, it seems to me like it was a good goal. Too bad it didn't, you know, go a different way.
My knowledge of that war was as a user and not up higher. We all did our jobs and helped each other out to get ourselves home. I can't say whether the communist ideal was good for that country or not. You look at that country now and they're prospering. So whether it was a good decision or a bad decision at that time, I know that what we were sent over there to do, a lot of the people did and what they were supposed to do.
Did you, when you came home from the war, did you deal with that the negativity and the fallout from, you know, the people that dissented?
Yeah. Not so much in my hometown. It was when you came back on the plane and you offloaded at the station, there was protesters that were out there and they would shout various things. A lot of it was intended to hurt you, and it was just a multi-mass hurt. They could care less what you did. It's just everybody was pegged with the same label.
Were you in '91 during the Gulf War at that point?
I was in the National Guard in Salem. We were not, our unit was not activated. We were flying Huey medevac. Actually, we were flying Huey lift at that time. We weren't medevac as of yet.
What's it been like to see the Black Hawk, you know, develop and come through, and to see that, you know, the technology and everything leap forward as it has?
Well, it's kind of funny because the Huey was like 1940s, 50s technology, and we flew them all the way up into the 80s. The Black Hawk is 70s, 80s technology, and we're flying it now. Granted, they're making modifications and improvements on it all the time, but I really like flying the Black Hawk. It is a good aircraft to fly for a lot of different reasons.
Well, it seems like for the families back at home, one of the things that comes to my mind is that survivability aspect. Can you talk about that for a second? I've been told it can actually survive 11 Gs going south.
I can't tell you about 11 Gs, but I can tell you, looking at that rescue that was on Mount Hood, the way that crashed, the survivability of the whole cockpit and airframe at that time. Once I saw that, I had a lot of respect for the Black Hawk. Real similar to what they used to have for the crashability of the Loach in Vietnam. The crash could withstand anything. But I don't know about G's, because I'm not sure. We have our limits, and I haven't pushed those.
You know, a lot of the folks around here, when your name comes up, you know, they kind of get, I don't know, I think they just really appreciate the fact that you're here with that kind of experience. Do people hit you up about your past experiences, people you work with here?
Oh, Krusty, yeah, all the time. We're called Krusty guys, Marco Fry and myself. Both of us flew in Vietnam, both of us have flown throughout the ages, and they look at that as kind of like a father type figure. We're not the only ones that are in that age group, but we're the oldest ones here in our unit.
So is this, how many tours for you in Iraq, and have you been to Afghanistan?
I've not been to Afghanistan. This is my first tour in Iraq. I did a tour in Bosnia, did a tour stateside in 2004, plus a tour in Vietnam.
That's a lot of flying. How many hours do you walk around knowing exactly how many hours you've flown?
Well, my closeout just happened and just got it, so I'm just under 6,000 hours with over 1,000 hours of that night vision goggles.
How do night vision goggles, you know, change things? Because you didn't have anything like that in Vietnam, correct?
No, we didn't, and we did a lot of the stuff in Vietnam and stateside as far as rescues without night vision goggles. But that's the way you did things. You took precautions, but you did it at night, and you used a landing light. With the night vision goggles, it allows you so much luxury in what you can do. Sometimes it can get people into trouble if they are way too confident in their abilities under those.
And we're talking about service and war, but obviously the Oregon Guard and the helicopter pilots in particular have such a distinguished record in the States. You're mentioning the Mount Hood rescue, but I mean, do you think other states operate that kind of safety record with rescuing civilians that the Oregon Guard does?
I think they do. Just looking at my counterparts across the states, a lot of them have very good pride in their units. I will say the maintenance in Oregon units is fabulous. We'll get some aircraft from other units, and our guys on the maintenance side are not real happy with them, and then go through them with a fine-tooth comb and bring them up to their standard. I know that we have a high standard in maintenance as well as professionalism in the cockpit. Even as it's turning younger back home in the units, there's still that professionalism that's expected of them.
Now, is it? Tell me if I'm correct in that the Guard units are seeing newer aircraft come into their inventory today than they used to. Is that true?
The aircraft that we have right now, the Chinooks are older. The Black Hawks are 96 models, which is new, 12 years old. The 58s that they're flying are 70 models. I'm not sure about the Sherpas, but those, excuse me, those came into the inventory probably 15 years ago. That's a guess because I'm not positive.
But these aircraft are continually upgraded, is that true?
Correct, and there's supposed to be a new aircraft coming into the Army inventory, and it's called the LUH, which is going to be replacing the Black Hawk Alpha models in some states, the Huey medevacs in some states. It's designed to be just a light utility helicopter.
Does it look like a Black Hawk?
No, not at all. It doesn't look like a Black Hawk. It's a mix of different manufacturers that came together, and it's actually flying out in the civilian world, actually in the medevac community. They're using them in France for high altitude rescues, so they're just starting to bring them in to the National Guard and Army inventory.
This is so interesting. Are you a pilot as a civilian also?
No, I'm not. I fly strictly military. I have a lot of respect for the guys who fly civilian, but at the same time frame, I don't have to pay. I'm being paid to fly. I don't have to pay for any of the hours that I fly. I don't have to pay for the maintenance of the fuel.
It's fairly convincing. I know those numbers can get really steep. What do you want people to know again? I know you mentioned earlier, but what do people need to understand about this mission over here where almost all of the 2641 people volunteered to be here? You know, what's important about this?
The fact that the units that we are supporting are transporting cargo and personnel around Iraq. We're here to make their life easier so that everything, when they come in to fly, everything is working for them. They don't have to do anything extra. Our job is to make it seamless and smooth for them. And no matter whether you're on days or nights, when the pilots and crews show up, if they can just get the mission and go perform it and come back, and they don't have anything else to do, then our mission is successful.
So what's it like to actually not be behind the stick, but to be doing the air support role? I would imagine that the experience you have probably comes in very handy on this side of the counter.
It does, but I'll tell you what, not flying for a tour is something that is tough, especially when you're used to sitting in the cockpit. I may get out, I may not, but I know when I get home I'll be able to fly.
I understand when you're a helicopter pilot that the bird actually, it's almost more of an extension of yourself. Is that an accurate assessment?
It can get that way when you have the experience. It's nice feeling when it's that way, because then you know at that point in time that the aircraft, and you're in the aircraft, you're not behind the aircraft like when you're first learning.
I'm in the middle of a book right now called CW2, which is about a young Army warrant officer.
I've read it.
What a challenging life that was in Vietnam. I mean, I think that maybe people don't realize, I mean, just how hard that was.
It was, and if you're reading that book, it's like two books in one. There's the first portion of it, which I thought was fairly accurate, even though it was fiction, and then the second half, which went off on a whole different tangent. But life in Vietnam was a little bit rougher than it is today. Technology-wise, you can get on your computer and you can go on MSN video and talk to your family back home. Back then it was Mars stations relaying a phone call every now and then once you got back to a base. So it's, the technology has helped a lot. The living conditions are much better. The food is getting better. The support back home is far better.
And again, people back home, you know, when they consider all of the things that we're talking about with the technology, the Black Hawk, they should feel more comfortable with their loved ones being over here.
Oh, you betcha. Doing the mission that we're doing right now, we're not actually out there on the front lines. We're not out flying the actual missions. So as far as this unit's concerned, the loved ones should feel a lot more secure.
Mr. Brown, I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much.